People need to know about a species in order to act on behalf of that species and protect their habitat. Polar Bears International is uniquely poised to connect people to polar bears in the Arctic. The Tundra Connections program allows us to connect scientists with viewers around the globe. And the goal of outreach like this is to instill hope and inspire action in our viewers.
We have a mobile broadcast studio, and we reach out to classrooms all over the world to talk about polar bears in the western Hudson Bay. We have a couple different kinds of connections that we do out here. Sometimes it's live back and forth, and other times the live connection goes out and questions are chatted back for us to answer.
Will polar bears go extinct?
What can my class do to help protect sea ice?
Just the other day, we had a Skype chat with an entire school in Kiev, and we got to show them their very first polar bear, and when that comes up on the screen, it's really cool.
It's neat to maybe inspire the next generation of scientists. Seeing their faces light up when we show them videos and photos and talk about our research gives us motivation to keep going and keep doing what we're doing.
Join us as we stream live. You can view the broadcast on our website or watch live chats on social media. Tune in, ask questions, join our efforts to protect polar bears and the sea ice they depend on.
Happy Earth Day, hello, and welcome, welcome, welcome. We're so glad that you're here for our Top 10, that's right. Top 10 things you can learn about polar bears in celebration of Earth Day. And that's right, today is the 50th anniversary of Earth Day. We're so excited to be able to bring you this spring Tundra Connections series in partnerships with Polar Bears International. In fact, you may be viewing this because you were at Discovery Education and you saw that logo of all the 50 different ways that you can celebrate Earth Day. And one of the special ways we're going to do that today is by bringing on our partners at the Columbus Zoo and Aquarium. We're so excited for you to meet their baby polar bear cub. As we go throughout the show, there's a couple things we want you to know, but first and foremost, before we get started, my name's Kyle Schutt with Discovery Education, and we are just so happy that you're joining with us in this Earth Day celebration. So let's go ahead and jump in because there's a couple ways you can interact, and that's the special thing about today. You can learn with us and you can ask us questions. So when you do so throughout the broadcast, go ahead and use that chat window if you're viewing on the Polar Bears International website, or go ahead and send questions to the inbox, questions@pbears.org. Again, that's questions@pbears.org. You might need to get a parent with an email address if you don't have one, but we definitely want to answer as many questions as we can. So let's go ahead and kick things off here. And we are, as I mentioned, doing a top 10 things to know about polar bears. So here's the cute little sign that my family, my children made for me this morning when they heard that I was doing this event. So top 10 things, and that 10 represents 10 years. In fact, 10 years that we have celebrated the Tundra Connections program and worked with Polar Bears International every fall, live from Churchill, Manitoba, where the polar bears just instinctually go and they're waiting for that sea ice to form on the Hudson Bay so they can get out there and eat. So as a part of that celebration, we're just so excited because we also have a Polar Bear International colleague and a scientist on the line. Thea, are you there?
I am. I'm joining you guys from Denmark, which is a tiny country in Scandinavia. You may not have heard about us, but for sure you've heard about Legos, and they were made here in Denmark. They still are, and we have the original Lego land.
That's excellent. We're so glad that you're joining with us and sharing your expertise. And we want you to know this is a global event. It's Global Earth Day, right? So we're connecting from around the world to learn about this important topic. So let's jump into number 9. Number 9 of our top 10 list is adaptations. It takes a lot of adaptations to live in the Arctic. So Thea, you're the expert here. I'm going to go ahead to you. Talk to us a little bit about polar bears. Let's show some images and get into it.
All right, excellent. Polar bears live in a really harsh environment, and they are so well adapted to it. So some of the things are, for example, this long neck that you can see in the picture. It's brilliant for when they have to dive right into that seal's breathing hole to catch the seal and get dinner. They also, as you know, they live in a very cold place, and so they have very short tails and also very short ears because they don't want to freeze them off. Other than that, polar bears have enormous paws. They can be like dinner plate size, and that's mostly because when they're walking on the sea ice, they have to distribute their weight so that they don't fall through. Then, of course, they have sharp teeth. Like I said before, polar bears eat seals, and in order to really grab a hold of that seal and keep a hold of it, because seals are kind of slick, it's good to have big sharp teeth. They also have very sharp claws. And honestly, that's for mostly the same purpose as the teeth. It's to grab a hold of the seals, but it's also to keep track, like on the ice. And as you can see here, you can also see the foot pad of the bear. They have kind of sticky feet, if you will, little suction cups underneath their foot pads, and that also helps them get a grip on the ice. And then we have the awesome thick fur. They have 2 layers of fur, and that really helps keep them warm, but they also have, very importantly, a good thick layer of fat that helps keep them warm, and that also serves kind of like their food. When they can't eat seals, they have to live off of their own body fat. So those are just some of the awesome adaptations.
I love it. Thank you. And that is such a great start here as we learn about these polar bears. We want to learn from you and with you. Of course, if you're on Twitter, go ahead, use that Earth Day hashtag. Go ahead and send tweet to @polarbears and @DiscoveryEd. We'd love to hear what you're learning about, what sticks out to you. And then again, that chat window is a great place to share as well, and put those questions to questions@pbears.org so that we can answer as many of those later in the session as possible. So, Thea, before we get on with our numbers here, I brought something along because, you know, I've been to Churchill. I've been fortunate to go along with you, actually, and the others from the Polar Bears staff, and to work and to live in Churchill, you have to adapt. So I brought along, I thought everybody might like to see my big expedition parka, right? Look at this, PBI ambassador of the Arctic. I thought maybe I'd put it on. I don't think, Thea, I have this feeling I probably can't wear this for the whole show because it's going to make me a little bit too hot. But man, this thing is,
Sure.
it's so warm, filled with goose down and of course the nice fur. I kind of fall asleep in here. No, I won't do that during our show. But there are a lot of adaptations that, of course, we have to make to survive where polar bears naturally thrive. So, Thea, I know you've worn one of these before. Any advice?
Oh, I would say if you're going somewhere really cold, just layer, and also get some really good boots. I think those are the most important things.
That's great advice because my feet, boy, do my feet get cold too. Yes, of course, we cannot survive or thrive where polar bears do, but those expedition parkas are pretty phenomenal. All right, so let's go ahead, kicking into number 8. Okay, so number 8 is months, as in 8 months is how long a female polar bear can go without food. That's right, you heard that correct. So, Tia, tell us, why is it that they go so long without food? And then what is it that polar bears typically eat and survive on?
Well, usually polar bears would eat seal to stay nice and round and fat and healthy. But pregnant females, they don't eat anything for up to 8 months. So this is a seal breathing hole, and you can see the foot tracks or the path from the bear. But so the female polar bears, if they're pregnant, they'll go into a den in the fall. Then they have their cubs around, say, Christmas time or New Year's. And then they'll stay in that den with their newborn cubs for another 3 months. And, altogether, that means that this female bear, she won't have eaten for up to 8 months. So once the time comes for them to emerge from the den, when the little cubs are big enough to handle that, she is quite eager to get back out onto the sea ice and eat some seals.
Wow, and that photo is pretty amazing. This one too, the bear's kind of just perched up there on the ice. It's important. That is their habitat after all, right? So let's talk about that. Let's talk about how bears move and how they get around. In fact, here we go. Number 7. I do have more of these signs, guys. I can keep pulling these out. Number 7, that's my prompt to BJ and KT, who are behind the scenes making us look good. Thanks, guys, for your help. Number 7 is the ways that a polar bear can scratch or just clean itself in general, roll around, just like the image of the bear here. So talk about that, Tia. How do bears move? Because I've seen them do some pretty amazing things that I wouldn't expect a bear would be doing.
Yeah, you can actually, sometimes we call them yoga bears because they have so many interesting poses that they can roll around in. Some bears, the ones that are living in Hudson Bay, the most southern polar bears, they have these shrubs you see behind them and they can kind of scratch on those. But all the other bears, they don't have any trees or anything that they can, use as a scratching post. So instead, as you see this bear doing, they'll just roll around on the snow. They'll roll, they'll slide, they'll rub, they'll shake, they'll slide. It looks awesome. Now this bear
It really
taking a
does.
little breather. Yeah,
Oh,
and
look
there
at
you
that, just
go.
rolling around. This is one of my favorites, seeing them just kind of roll around in the brambles there. Now, again, just talking about how we're even able to take these photos. Bears, of course, you don't want to be near them. You need to be safe and respect their habitat. Can you talk to us a little bit? Where is this taking place? Where is this bear, and why is it that it's kind of in the brambles there as opposed to out on the ice?
Yeah, so because there are actually shrubs or brambles here, you can tell immediately that this is in Churchill in western Hudson Bay. And so in Hudson Bay, the sea ice disappears completely over the summer months. And so the bears have to be on land. And usually the first place the sea ice is going to come back is around the town of Churchill. So this is where all the bears will congregate. It's where they'll hang out on the shores of the bay and wait for the sea ice to come back. And while they're doing that, we can go up there and we can get really, really awesome polar bear observations.
Yeah, this is pretty phenomenal. It gives you that idea of what that sea ice looks like and what the environment is that they live in. It's pretty stark compared to at least where I live. I'm joining from Pennsylvania. I didn't mention that earlier, but it's green and lush in springtime right now. So very, very different. Okay, again, a reminder, if you have not already, please continue to send us those questions. Use that inbox questions at pbears.org, or of course the chat window, so that we can keep an eye on all of those questions and answer them. But we are rolling away here, and that was number 7. So I think that must make us here on number 6, and that is the key species. Here's a good vocabulary term. Hopefully many of you know this word, species. But if you don't know, let's talk about the species that are in the Arctic food web. Because bears, of course, you think about them and the seals that you mentioned, Tia, that they eat. But there's a lot more that's going on. Although it looks kind of barren and stark, there's a lot going on from even a microbiology perspective.
Oh, the Arctic is so rich, but you have to look a little bit harder to figure out how it is. And so what we're talking about here is the food web or the food chain, which is basically just a series of organisms that are dependent on each other for food. And so the sea ice is incredibly important to the polar bear because this is where the polar bear catches seals from the sea ice. And so you have the polar bear at the very top of the food chain. But the sea ice is also incredibly important at the bottom of the food chain. And as you can see here, underneath the sea ice, you actually have a lot of algae growing. And these algae are so important because we also call them phytoplankton because they are plant algae. And then you have the diatoms eating this plant algae. Actually, diatoms are also plant algae, but slightly different, a little bit bigger. And then the diatoms are eaten by the copepods, which is what we call zooplankton because they're animals, but they're tiny animals. They're like 1 to 2 millimeters or up to 0.08 inches big. So you can see them, but they're tiny.
Wow, that's
And then the
not big at all.
copepods, I know, but they're so important because then the polar cod or the Arctic cod, they feed on these copepods. And then this fish is eaten by the ringed seal, and then the ring seal is eaten by the polar bear. So as you can see, the sea ice is just incredibly important at both ends of the food chain in the Arctic.
That is pretty neat. So okay, let's talk about number 5 then. Let's shift gears here because it's important to know kind of their habitat, where they live, what they rely on. But bears have, well, they have senses just like you and me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead. Yep. What are they? List them out. Sight. Yep. Hearing. What's that you said? Oh, smell. Yes, of course, smell. Taste and touch. That's right. So go ahead, look at this polar bear and its long, super long tongue. I wonder what it's doing. Tia, can you tell us about polar bear senses?
Absolutely. I want to start with their sight, though, their eyes and their vision. Polar bears, their vision is kind of like yours and mine, except they probably don't see the color green as well as we do, which makes sense because, evolutionarily, they haven't had a whole lot of green to look at. Then there's hearing. Polar bears hear more or less the way you and I do. They're a little bit better at hearing sounds in like the high frequency spectrum. So like a dog whistle, they would probably be able to hear that, even though we can't. Then we have taste. Polar bears definitely like things that taste oily. They're known to eat like skidoo seeds because they smell oily and maybe they have a good texture. Who knows? Of course, they prefer seals, but definitely they have taste buds. Then they have a sense of touch, which mostly, is through the foot pads. As far as we know, probably the nose is pretty sensitive too. But when they're feeling out the sea ice to see, can it hold me, can it not? Is it thick enough? Is it not? But then the most important sense for any polar bear is the sense of smell. We haven't done any studies exactly, but if you were to estimate it, I would say that a polar bear's sense of smell is 100 or hundreds of times, if not thousands of times, better than what you and I are able to smell. And if you're lucky enough, maybe you go to a natural history museum, you find a polar bear skull. If you look inside the nose of that skull, you'll see that there are they're tiny little bones inside of the nose, and they're called turbinate bones. And what they do is that they increase the inner surface of the bear's nose. And that is one of the big, big secrets to this amazing sense of smell that polar bears have, is many cells inside their pretty big nose to help them smell out the seals.
Wow, that's fascinating. Your wealth of information. There's so much that we're getting asked about. In fact, let's bounce over to some questions. Tia, I think I heard you maybe lead into a joke there, something about bearing with us. I'm not quite sure if I heard that right, but
It's so old. I didn't want to say it, but it just happened.
Oh, come on now. This is wonderful. I love it. We have students out there. They're working on their comedic relief, right? So go ahead and submit those questions. Couple country questions specifically for Earth Day. I think this is a great one from Suzanne, and that is, Tia, you studied bears all around the world. Suzanne's wondering, what countries in the world do polar bears live? Maybe you don't need to name them all, but I'm sure you can list a few, especially based where you live.
Yeah. So I will mention them all, but really fast. We have 5 polar bear countries. We have Greenland, which is kind of a part of Denmark. We have Canada. We have the US in Alaska. We have Russia all along their huge coastline. And then we have Svalbard, which is a part of Norway. So those are the 5 polar bear countries all around the high Arctic.
Excellent. We have some viewers in Ohio. They'd like to know, how do bears manage tissue loss during a long fast? So for those of us that are younger viewers, they're asking, during a long time when they're not eating, that long fast, how do the bears manage that amount of tissue loss? Tia?
So usually if they have a good fat layer, that is what they will eat first. So that is the tissue, if you will, that they'll lose first. And it's supposed to be lost, so that's not a problem. When the mom is in the den for 8 months, like we were talking about before, actually polar bears and other bears are really special in that they don't really lose a lot of tissue even when they're not moving. If you or I didn't move for months and months on end, we would definitely be able to see that. But for polar bears, they're very, like their physiology makes it so that they don't lose tissue in the same way that we do.
Excellent. Well, we have a number of other questions. Keep submitting those. This answer here, this is a kind of a great setup. Both Lexi, who's in Alberta, hi Lexi, thanks for joining, and Lane, who's in North Carolina, hello there, viewers from all around the world, truly. One wants to know what's the biggest polar bear you've ever seen, and then the other one wants to know the difference between a older bear and a younger bear. And so, Tia, I thought this might just be a perfect transition to bring in our polar bears live from the Columbus Zoo and Aquarium. And in fact, we have a cub joining us today. I think I have the cub right here. Yeah? No? Oh, no, that's not the baby cub. Let's get to the real cub. There's Devon. There's Tom. I see them on the line. We have today Tom, who is Tom Stalf, the president and CEO of the Columbus Zoo and Aquarium. And of course, the zookeeper. Devon, we're so glad that you're here. Devon Sabo joining us and going to show off the bears. How are you, team? And happy Earth Day.
Happy Earth Day. I can't believe it's 50 years celebrating Earth Day. And here at the Columbus Zoo and Aquarium, we are so proud to continue to support Polar Bear International. It's been 12 years that we've been supporting PBI. I've had the opportunity to travel with them to Churchill, to be out in the tundra buggies. And, it's just amazing to see all of the polar bears. We love them. And for the first time ever, this is the first day, the debut of our young polar bear. So I want to be able to bring in Devon and let's introduce our new addition. We are the only zoo in North America to have success with a young polar bear cub. So let's see what he's doing.
Hi guys, I'm here in Polar Frontier and we are having a great day today. As Tom said, we've got our mama bear Aurora showing around her almost 5-month-old cub in our polar bear habitat, and they're having a ton of fun. It's also a really exciting day for us here because after a public naming opportunity, we found out that over 55 countries have elected to name our cub Kulu. So I'm going to show you Kulu here with his mom, Aurora. So Kulu is a perfect name for this little guy for a couple reasons. One is Kulu is a term of endearment for the Inuit culture. And that is so fitting because the Inuit culture is indigenous to some of the countries where the polar bears live, and polar bears play an important role for them. And secondly, Kulu being a term of endearment is obviously a perfect fit because as soon as you see this little guy, you fall in love with him. So we've thrown a couple toys in the water, and one of Mom's favorite treats, which you'd probably be surprised to hear, is lettuce. So it looks like they're not sure if they want to get in the pool right now. They just got out a little bit ago, but we'll see if they get in here shortly.
Devon, this is so amazing. We see the sign there in the background, and that's, this is live, everybody. So live at the zoo, how cool is this to see just Kulu hanging out? And again, for Earth Day, what a special surprise that we get to find out a name of the new cub. Tom, that is so impressive to see so many people that just chipped in to share their thoughts on what a great name would be. So tell us a little bit more, Devon, about, what is your day? Oh, go ahead, Tom. I apologize.
Oh, I was just going to say, here at the Columbus Zoo and Aquarium, we're seeing millions of people each year come to the zoo. Polar Frontier, by far, is one of the most popular areas. There's a great place to learn more about the Arctic regions and to watch the polar bears, as it looks like they might go in today and go swimming. I hope they do.
I sure hope so too. Devon, tell us a little bit about their day, about their routine, and what your role is, because that's pretty neat. There might be some students here watching that might want your job one day to be a zookeeper.
Yeah, so these guys kind of follow a similar routine that we do. They get up at sunrise and are ready for their first big meal of the day, and then they stay pretty active through lunchtime. Around this time of day is when they're typically getting ready to start taking a nap. So you can kind of see Kulu's like ready to tuck in a little bit here soon. And then they have another play session before bedtime, which is typically around sunset. So they kind of follow the light cycle. And it depends on time of year, what aspects of the habitat they're using the most. In the summer, they definitely enjoy the pool. It's a chilly 40 degrees, so it feels really good to them in the summer. And then, part of our jobs as zookeepers are obviously taking care of these polar bears. So not only is that feeding them and taking care of their habitat, but also providing them with a lot of behavioral opportunities throughout the day, like giving them different types of enrichment. If you look at the little black barrel over here in the pool to the left, Aurora just a little bit ago was pouncing on that, just like a polar bear would pounce on pack ice to try to break through. So those are different things that we try to encourage them to do. Another way we keep them really busy is the live fish in the pool. So something really neat for us to see is that they use a similar hunting technique that they would in the Arctic for catching seals. So instead of wasting a lot of their time and energy trying to catch a seal in the water when the seals are obviously much faster than them and more agile, they wait for that seal to come up through their breathing hole. And our bears do the same thing. They've learned that it's not an efficient way for them to try to, chase the trout around through the pool. So as soon as they see us throw trout chow in, they dive in and they wait at the top of the water with that trout chow and wait for the fish to come to them. So that's a neat thing for us to watch them do here.
Wow, this is so cool. We love seeing this. Now, talk to us a little bit. So number 4, you said, or we shared, is that you have 4 bears there. Our number 3 is that you have 3 adult bears at the zoo, right? Can you talk to us a little bit about the adult bears that are there?
That's right. So in addition to this little guy, we have our 3 adult polar bears. So we obviously have mom here, Aurora, but we also have her twin sister, Anana, and then we have Kulu's dad, Lee. So something really fascinating about these guys and really impressive, I think, is just how large they are and how fast they grow. So Kulu, when he was born, he was only 1 to 2 pounds. And his dad Lee is over 1,000 pounds. So, at 5 months of age, almost, he's already over 90 pounds. So that shows just how fast he is growing. And then our 2 females are typically around 500, 550 pounds. But when they're packing on that weight to go into denning season, they put on 1/3 of their body weight. So they are over 800 pounds typically. So that's a neat thing for us to watch, is a over 800-pound mom in her den with her little 1 to 2 pound cub, and just how they maneuver around them, how they help them nurse, and just how careful they are with them. It's a really neat experience to see that.
And we're seeing the footage of Kulu when, just kind of newly born in the den. Is pretty amazing to see just how small and the size difference. Now we're getting lots of questions. Keep those questions coming in because we want to answer them. In fact, we had a couple questions come in here, Devon, around what they eat. Okay. In fact, Emma in California wanted to know if they eat whales. We also had another student wondering about, you mean they don't eat seals when they're at the zoo? Well, number 2, that's kind of our lead-in, because number 2 is the types of seals that polar bears eat. So I know that's ringed seals and bearded seals in the wild, but can you talk a little bit more about what they eat at the zoo?
Yeah, so here at the zoo, they are not eating seals. We do make them little seal-shaped ice blocks to play with, but they are actually eating a meat-based diet, and they receive quite a bit of fish. So to give you an idea of amounts, our adult bears typically receive 5 to 10 pounds of meat each daily, and probably around 4 or 5 pounds of fish. And Kulu, although he's still nursing every few hours from mom, he's also getting some meat and fish as well. He's getting a little under a pound of meat and about a half a pound of fish, and he receives that during his training sessions, which he's really enjoying already. He sits right next to mom and is learning from her and participating in training sessions. And those are really important here, not only to help us better care for our bears, but also to help us learn more about their counterparts in the Arctic.
Excellent. And so many questions coming in. How about this one for you, Devon? They want to know about the polar bears and just, having a warmer temperature at your zoo, being a more southern latitude. I love the vocabulary terms coming in here. We have some higher students in our broadcast, which is excellent. So they want to know, speaking of the higher temperatures where you are based in Ohio, how do they cope? What are some of the things that you do or that they do in order to survive?
Yeah, so surprisingly, we have seen that the polar bears actually handle the warmer temperatures pretty well, and that's something to think about when you think about the warmer temperatures and the threat that causes for polar bears. It's less about the temperature and more about that loss of sea ice that they are facing because of the warming temperatures. And here in Columbus, Ohio, what we notice in the summer is although we give them plenty of opportunities to cool down, whether offering a lot of ice enrichment or, as I said earlier, that pool is very chilly, 40 degrees, which I myself could say is extremely cold, or a fogging system, and they always have access inside to the air conditioning. We actually find that they choose to stay outside. And I don't know, over to the right here, you can see this really tall rock. That's their favorite spot in the summer to just lay out and lay in the sun. So they actually do pretty well.
All right. More questions. I think they see Kulu kind of swimming around. It's just so fascinating to see the bears here interacting. We're so thankful. One of the questions here from Aiden is do we know how long a polar bear can hold their breath, especially as they're diving under the water?
Tia might have a better answer than me. My understanding, it's about the same length of time that we can, but she might know a little bit better.
Yeah, that's a great one. We will bring Tia back in a little bit to answer as our polar bear biologist. But do you see them holding their breath? Do you see them diving under in the pool often?
Yeah, they dive. So our pool is about 20 feet deep, and they dive all the way down to the bottom, and they can hold their breath quite a good period of time, long enough to grab whatever it is they're searching for down there and come back up. And the cubs, that's one of the things they learn to do as they get older. At first, they kind of will hang on to mom, and when she dives, they'll go down a little bit with her. And as they get older, they learn to go all the way down, all the way back up. They're very buoyant when they're young, so it's hard for them to get down, but they eventually learn that skill, and they enjoy doing it.
Excellent. Well, we are enamored by watching this, or at least I am. I hope everyone else is, because this is so fascinating. I don't get to see polar bears every day. As we keep watching, I have a couple questions. And Tom, if we can bring you back, I'd love to hear a little bit. We were getting questions around what you can do, especially in regards to Earth Day. And I'm just thinking, we have a unique opportunity here with your career and knowing all the careers that you support at the zoo. There's lots of careers where if you have a passion for bears or wildlife or the outdoors, that students might not necessarily think of the direct connections and what their possibilities might be. So can you speak to a little bit of the careers at the zoo?
Yeah, thanks, Kyle. I do career days and we speak to students all the time. And, it's time to build your resume. It's time to do it right now. So the thing to do, fall in love with wildlife. That's the most important thing you can do. And, it's time to start volunteering. Join different organizations that support wildlife. Go to your local zoo. It's so important that you make a difference. I think the most important thing to do is right away volunteer. There are many opportunities to volunteer. We take volunteers as they're teenagers. It's called a Zoo Aid program. And you have that opportunity to help out. Now, you're not going to be right there with Devon the first day you volunteer, but you work your way into it. Realize there are so many reasons why zoos matter. And one of the most important things we can do is inspire people to care about wildlife and do that every day. Well, we need help. We have 2,500 employees at the Columbus Zoo and Aquarium, and we have hundreds of volunteers. So as you volunteer, you get an opportunity to put that on your resume and say, while I was at the Columbus Zoo for the summer of 2020, I worked here, I did this, and I learned that, and I helped people. And it's about, really making a difference. And then when you're of age, then it's time to try to find a job with wildlife. So either at your animal shelters, at your local zoo, there's wildlife centers in everybody's areas. So also different types of park systems. Just get active, get out into nature, and start. Everyone wants to be like Devon, and so I think that's the thing we want to do is learn about all the things that we can do. But one thing that's really important when you talk about the responsibilities of what Devon has to do every day, it's really focusing on training as well, and caring for all of our animals. Our top priority is animal welfare.
Excellent, thank you. And I think Devon is there. We're hearing a little bit of the wind. It must be picking up there. Devon, if you're still there with us, and yep, we see the bears now. A couple questions for you, Devon, related to your role and your career. How did you fall into your career path? And do you have any advice for students? And we are getting a little bit of wind, so you might have to back up a little bit.
Sorry about that. So yeah,
that's
I started
okay.
Here. So I started here actually in high school in the gift shop, and that's how my career started. I have a little bit of a different story because my mom is a zookeeper. So I grew up around animals and watching her and just how much she loved her career, and obviously from a young age had a love for animals. And so yeah, I started in the gift shop and then was able to get a seasonal position in the animal areas and worked in the diet kitchen for a while, and then finally was able to get on as a zookeeper. So I've been working with the polar bears now for about 10 years, and I would have never imagined that I would actually get to, in this experience, be able to travel to Churchill. I was able to participate in Polar Bears International's Climate Alliance program, and with that, a group of us keepers all traveled to Churchill and talked about, the best ways to care for polar bears, what different types of research polar bears in zoos can be participating in to help their cousins in the Arctic, and also just learning about climate science and what we can do to help the polar bears in our homes, in our community. And so this is really exciting for me to be a part of all this, because we're sharing with you our wonderful polar bears, and hopefully you are, falling in love with them as I did, and will want to do what you can for the species and their ecosystem.
I know I am, and just a reminder, this is our top 10, right? So since this is our top 10 list, we need to get to number 1, and we haven't done that, so now's the time. And our 1 for our top 10 list is you, right? One person, you can make a difference. And that's all we ask, is think about who can you share what you learned today with your family, with your friends. Who else can you share with? Because right now, more than ever, it's important to learn about these animals, learn about the natural world, and just continue to follow your curiosity. What do you want to learn about? Make your own top 10 list like we did to share what we think was important for you to know about polar bears. You can do that, right? We know you can. So I'm going to go around to our panel. I see we have Thea back, we have Tom, we have Devon. Thea, if we can start with you, what's the one thing that you would like everyone to know before we wrap up for the day?
Well, I mean, first of all, I want to just totally agree with you that it's so important to talk to people about what you learned about polar bears and all the reasons why they need sea ice, and just, care for each other, for the animals, and realize that, together we can build the future that we want. And one of the ways that you can also be part of the solutions is to, like the other guys mentioned, is your future career. And I just want to say you could also be, for example, an engineer and, work in renewable energy. You could be a scientist, you could even be an artist and inspire people to care about the environment, or you could become like a policymaker, someone who makes all the rules. So there are so many opportunities regardless of what your passion is.
Thank you, and thank you for all your help in teaching us today, Thea. Tom, I'm going to go to you. What's the one thing that you would leave everyone with?
Oh, our mission here at the Columbus Zoo Aquarium is very simple. Lead and inspire by connecting people and wildlife. Do me a favor, fall in love with wildlife. You'll protect them. It's so important that we learn about all the great ways. And I think the most important thing that we can do is support Polar Bears International, PBI, because they're in the field. They are inspiring people every single day to care about wildlife and wild places.
I love that and couldn't agree more. Devon, to you for our last closing thoughts. And again, thank you for being willing to be there. We know you're there around the clock almost to take care of these bears, but thank you so much for showing us their habitat and what they're up to. But what's the one thing you would like to share with everyone?
Of course, I think just reiterating what you guys said, that taking what you learned here today, sharing it with your loved ones, with your friends, and like Tom said earlier, getting involved in the community level is extremely important. Anything you can do will help, and just thanks for joining us.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Thea, Tom, Devon, BJ, KT, the folks at Polar Bears International behind the camera making this work today. We're so thankful. From Discovery Education, the 50 ways that you can learn about Earth Day, we are so happy that you're joining us today. And of course, there's so much more. You can learn more from Polar Bears International Education website as well. You can go ahead and check out one of their partners, explore.org, where you can follow your curiosity and go to watch those cameras. To Tom's point, you can fall in love with whatever type of animal probably you want to learn about on the explore.org cameras and really kind of follow where they live in nature. And of course, now more than ever, we just want to say thank you. As we're depending on each other, we're so thankful that you're joining us. This is amazing. You see these bears, they're swimming around. I mean, you can't script this stuff. That's just what they're doing. It's so incredible to see these bears and remind us what's important about everything that we're doing here today. So for the rest of the Tundra Connection series, you can learn more at polarbearsinternational.org. We thank you. Until next time, have a wonderful rest of your day and happy Earth Day. Goodbye, everybody. That was awesome.
Bye.
See you later, guys.
Thank you. Bye.
People need to know about a species in order to act on behalf of that species and protect their habitat. Polar Bears International is uniquely poised to connect people to polar bears in the Arctic. The Tundra Connections program allows us to connect scientists with viewers around the globe. And the goal of outreach like this is to instill hope and inspire action in our viewers.
We have a mobile broadcast studio, and we reach out to classrooms all over the world to talk about polar bears in the Western Hudson Bay. We have a couple different kinds of connections that we do out here. Sometimes it's live back and forth, and other times the live connection goes out and questions are chatted back for us to answer.
Will polar bears go extinct?
What can my class do to help protect sea ice?
Just the other day, we had a Skype chat with an entire school in Kiev, and we got to show them their very first polar bear, and when that comes up on the screen, it's really cool.
It's neat to maybe inspire the next generation of scientists. Seeing their faces light up when we show them videos and photos and talk about our research gives us motivation to keep going and keep doing what we're doing.
Join us as we stream live. You can view the broadcast on our website or watch live chats on social media. Tune in, ask questions, join our efforts to protect polar bears and the sea ice they depend on.
People need to know about a species in order to act on behalf of that species and protect their habitat. Polar Bears International is uniquely poised to connect people to polar bears in the Arctic. The Tundra Connections program allows us to connect scientists with viewers around the globe. And the goal of outreach like this is to instill hope and inspire action in our viewers.
We have a mobile broadcast studio, and we reach out to classrooms all over the world to talk about polar bears in the western Hudson Bay. We have a couple different kinds of connections that we do out here. Sometimes it's live back and forth, and other times the live connection goes out and questions are chatted back for us to answer.
Will polar bears go extinct?
What can my class do to help protect sea ice?
Just the other day, we had a Skype chat with an entire school in Kiev, and we got to show them their very first polar bear, and when that comes up on the screen, it's really cool.
It's neat to maybe inspire the next generation of scientists. Seeing their faces light up when we show them videos and photos and talk about our research gives us motivation to keep going and keep doing what we're doing.
Join us as we stream live. You can view the broadcast on our website or watch live chats on social media. Tune in, ask questions, join our efforts to protect polar bears and the sea ice they depend on.